Hey guys, welcome into Something Like Therapy. On today's episode, me and Jess discuss being raised and growing up in an emotionally immature family. For a lot of us, we didn't even realize that that was our story or what an emotionally immature family was. So we kind of give some insight on what that looks like and how being raised in that kind of environment, what it does for us as adults now. So hopefully you guys gain some insight from today's episode. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back.
Welcome back.
What's going on? We may have been absent for a little bit, but who knows? Maybe we just did one yesterday, or maybe it was a month ago. In our world, we don't know. So maybe you just listened to the last one right before this, so you're just like, "What are you talking about?" But either way, if it's been a while, hey, how are you? If it hasn't, hey, how are you?
How's it going?
So, today we are going to talk about something that it's been coming up. I forgot where we first, it was on some YouTube video or something we saw. And then the subject came up again and again. And it was one of those where we just kind of like looked at each other and we were just like, yeah, we got to do an episode on
Yeah.
this. Like, we should have already been recording this because I think hopefully we can, because we had some really good insight and points that we made in our conversation. So hopefully we remember all that. But yeah, we want to talk about it today. So we're going to be talking about growing up in an emotionally immature family. So I think a lot of people went through that. Maybe they're aware that they did, or maybe they
Mm-hmm.
weren't. I wasn't actually until it was like one of those where you hear someone talk about it and you're just like, oh my God, that's me. Like, yes, that's me. So, yeah, for those of you who don't know, to grow up in an emotionally immature family means that you lived in a household with people like parents, siblings, whoever you grew up with in your home that didn't really, like, in a mature or adult way, able to express emotions or to communicate how we would normally communicate
Mm-hmm.
with children or with adults. And a lot of the times it felt just, like you can feel that tension, that awkwardness. And that's why I say a lot of people have probably or did probably grow up in that situation, but just maybe felt like, oh, that was normal, or
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't that everyone's household. It's kind of like the ongoing joke, like, oh, everyone has messed up parents and everyone has, messed up childhood or whatever. But it's just like, no, that's not normal. And that shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
even be considered normal, or it shouldn't be the norm for it to be normal.
Or even go as
Um,
far as not even really think that there's anything wrong with how people dealt with issues.
exactly.
Like that was just the norm. And, doesn't everybody deal with that? Doesn't everybody just give, everyone the silent treatment? Like,
Yeah.
it's just, it's not necessarily that you thought in any way that it was unhealthy or toxic. It's just, that's just how it was.
Because if that's what all you knew and
Mm-hmm.
that's what you saw every day, why would you ever think it's not normal?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I mean, unless you were like, 7, 8 year old and, at baseball practice talking with your other friends about like, hey, does your like mom and dad act like this? Like, no, we didn't, we were kids. So yeah, these are among other things that you realize as an adult when
Mm-hmm.
you look back on it, like, oh damn, like, yeah, that wasn't normal, like that wasn't cool, like what happened
Mm-hmm.
there. So that's going to be the topic for today. Like I said, it's been something that's kind of pressing on our minds and I'm excited to talk about. We did some research as always, and kind of just got like, went through different, like I said, YouTube videos and different articles that have been written on it, in regards to, you know, products of relationships and families, and then people, therapists that have helped people through those kind of things, realizations of those kind of things. So yeah, we just want to hit some bullet points and kind of talk about what it is, how people, what they went through, and how it kind of affected them growing up, how it affected them now as adults, and what people are kind of doing to, you know, to help themselves or to get past that.
And as always, we want to bring our personal story and our own personal experiences with not only growing up with emotionally immature parents or families, also us
Yeah.
ourselves, how we became emotionally immature, how we parented from a very unhealthy and emotionally immature, um, you know, point
Yeah.
of view. And so,
And two, you know, I I don't want it to seem like this is, and it's never the case in any topic we do, that we're like blaming, judging, or bashing anyone. This isn't a I'm gonna come on here and me and Jess are gonna like, it's our parents' fault why we are who we are. No, this has nothing. I mean, I shouldn't say it has nothing to do with them. Of course, it has
well,
something to do
we'll
with them.
always
That
blame
was
our parents because who
because
else do you blame? It's the same
exactly.
way we know that at some point our kids are going to look at us like, well, you should have known better.
Yeah,
You should have taught me better. And
and
this is a learning experience
yeah,
for any human
exactly.
being.
I was gonna say, like, when you're a teen or when you're, a young adult and you don't have kids, it's really like oh yeah, it's my parents' fault. It's this and this and this. But then, at least in my experience, having now, or being a father, and having raised my kids, I realized like, oh, there's so much more that I didn't
Mm-hmm.
see, obviously, because I
Right.
was a kid or I was a teen. And honestly, there are things that I've done, raising our kids, and that I remember now my parents doing while they were raising me, that maybe fit into these categories of immaturity. But again, it's just because people are unaware. Because what did my parents see from their parents, and what did
Right.
their parents see from their parents? And that's kind of something we talk about, or we want to talk about at the end, of just like, like everything, breaking the cycle, breaking that curse,
Right.
breaking, the what was considered norm. Because the only way to really grow from anything, obviously, is through experience, but also the realization, the admitting it, and saying, okay, well, what do I do now? What do I do to make sure our kids don't
Mm-hmm.
continue this? So that's, something we want to talk about later on the episode. But yeah, so
And
we'll
even if you don't have kids, if you have pets,
raising your pets.
you want to raise your pets from a healthy and just more mature level of parenting, because
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. Like, even with, we've been training our golden retriever, and
God.
I don't know if you guys are a fan of Caesar Milan, but I realize, like, I'm the problem, not her, so it's a lot of the times that's exactly how it is when you are trying to parent your children, or even just have any other relationship. You need to have emotional maturity, because if you don't recognize what you're doing wrong, you can't expect the other, party to follow. So,
Yep. That's why
yeah.
you gotta listen to Taylor Swift. She tried to say it. It's you.
It's you. It always
It
is.
always is. So some of the things with parents being immature. Um, I think I think we've said it before, where there's like people that we know where it's like, yeah, they had no business being a parent.
Mm.
And it's like, I know it's a mean thing to say, and maybe they realize it, hey, life is life. You find yourself in situations where it's like, I wasn't expecting that, wasn't planning for that. Um, but there are just some people where it's just like, you can just tell, and most of the time they're narcissists. You can just
Mm-hmm.
tell. Everyone has a narcissist in their life. Um,
I
or,
think we all have narcissistic
oh yeah,
tendencies.
no, for sure. Everyone
But
has the
then there's
tendencies. I think
narcissists.
it's like everything. It's like on a spectrum, and some people have, are on the
Mm-hmm.
spectrum, and some people are way over here, where it's just like, yeah, you're dude, like wow. But along those lines, where because one of the things about being an immature, emotionally immature, is where you kind of just prioritize your own needs. And as a parent, we quickly learned, yeah, that goes out the door, because it's no longer about you. What do
Mm-hmm.
we tell our son with his new daughter? Like, bro, it is no longer about you anymore. Like, you've realized that, huh? So, but there are some people who it just never sinks in.
No.
They're just like, it's me, and then if I can get to you, okay, kid, what do you need? And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, that leads to a lot of issues for that child growing
Right.
up. Like they say, when you go through that, you know, you begin to feel there's a lot of things that could happen depending on the person of what really happens, how they respond to it, how they begin to try to overcome it, and a lot of times it's negative things.
Mm-hmm.
Like they either completely shut down, avoid everything, avoid wanting to communicate, avoid wanting to get in the way, or they become or they feel like they take on the whole like, well, they're not being the parent, so I got to do it. I
Yeah.
got to be the one who's emotionally strong. I got to communicate. I got to initiate the communication. I got to make sure they're doing okay. Um, and that's something I think, like I said, when I we started talking about this, or I forgot, like I said, it was a YouTube video. One of the things that made me like the aha moment was that feeling, was feeling like I feel like everything's on me. Like I have to be the one that pleases everyone, to make sure there's no conflict, to make sure everyone's happy, like clean what I gotta clean, do all my homework, do this, make sure everything's okay. Because I was like scared of conflict. I was scared
Mm.
of expressing how I felt or asking how my parents felt or my brother felt or whatever, like so that's definitely obviously not good. And
Right.
I've seen and noticed now how it's trickled down or influenced who the person I am today, where I
Right.
kind of still have tendencies of doing that.
Well, as children, we begin to build like coping mechanisms, and we
Mm-hmm.
begin to build these. Uh, I don't like to say walls, but just like security or protection around us, where we feel like, well, when I do this, people respond like this, or when I do this, people, seem to look at me differently or look at me in a positive way. So that's what we tend to do, right? So when you realize that, well, when I don't create trouble, my parents seem to be happier with me. When I
Mm-hmm.
stay out of the way, my parents seem to be like, a little more kinder, or either give me things that I want because I'm being a good girl, I'm being a good boy, so it's like this transactional type of relationship that we begin to build, and it does create an unhealthy dynamic when you bring that over into an intimate relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I know that a lot of the times, and I feel like you and I didn't understand how emotionally immature we were until, and I hate to bring it always back to this, but until we stopped drinking and we started to realize these patterns that we had, and we started to dive in a little bit more into how we were raised, how we grew up. You and I grew up in two completely different households. I grew up with a single mom that the only other parent figure that was there was my grandmother, um, which that in itself was a very toxic type of household because there were two dominant women
Hmm.
that always wanted to lead, but unfortunately they had their own issues, and they both needed to work. So, and you grew up in for the most part with a mom and a dad, so we were very raised very differently. However, I think we both grew up in emotionally immature homes
Mm-hmm.
where we felt like we needed to at some point become the parents, at some point become the ones that had to comfort ourselves, and we had to create these walls or these barriers between us and other people, because we didn't have parents that comforted us in the way that we really, really needed it. So I think a lot of what we experienced, even though we were in different types of homes, different dynamics, were very similar in
Mm-hmm.
the sense where when you and I got together, we had a lot of expectations of each other. We had a lot of expectations of our relationship. However, it wasn't your responsibility to meet my needs or my responsibility to meet your needs. And then once children came into the picture, that was a whole other story. And I just want to say really quick something that you said in the beginning about parents that have kids and still fail to put their children first. When someone decides to start a family or have children, or even if you don't, even let's just say it's oops, having a baby
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to go through with it. However, I have no idea how I'm going to deal with this. Once you make that decision, you have a responsibility to that child, right? You have a responsibility to that life that you decided to bring in. So to not take that into consideration, and when this child now needs you, and you have to put their needs above your own, and you still fail to do that, I really do. I ask myself, I mean, and I'm going to say this, like, there is times where we're all selfish, right? I mean, it's like human nature to be selfish, but you have to stop and ask, okay, my child didn't ask to be here. That was my choice. And I took that, that responsibility on. So I have a responsibility to put their needs first. And second comes me, and then third will come my spouse. And I know some people won't agree with that, but or second comes us, right? um but I think a lot of people struggle with that because they felt like when they were children they were also set aside. So when does our time come? When do we come first? And I can see how that can happen. However, that is not your child's responsibility. It's not your child's responsibility to make up for what you lacked when you grew up.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the times I see that so much. I see that in my own life, where I find myself comforting my parent. I see myself giving advice, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think our children can teach us many things. There's been times in my life where I feel like my older son has spoken some wisdom to me, and for that I'm very grateful. But it will never be an expectation that I place on him. I don't expect him to figure it out for me. If he's willing to, speak into my life in whatever way he feels led, then I welcome it. But it's not an expectation. However, I think parents place that expectation on children many times, and it's unfair. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate. So I just want to say that, there's a special place for parents that still refuse to put their children first. And I'm not coming from a place of judgment. I guess I just don't understand it. um I know that there is times that I've done it, but I've caught myself and I tried to fix the situation. But there's some people, like you said, they will never, or they've yet to see it, and
Yeah.
their kids could be almost adults now, and still,
Yeah.
that same dynamic continues. It's very unfortunate.
Yeah. And I think too, one of the going back to like you said, like us growing up in different situations and families, one thing adding to that too is what we always talk about is how I it's like we were switched. You were the first child
Mm-hmm.
and your brother much younger, or
Right.
almost pretty much like almost like feels like a generation
Mm-hmm.
later. And me the opposite. My brother being almost 10 years older than me. And then, so
We're
what I'm
on the
trying,
opposite side of the
yeah,
spectrum.
exactly. So what I'm trying to,
We both have siblings 10 years apart.
about 10
However,
years
I'm the
apart.
oldest, you're the
Exactly.
youngest. Yeah.
And what I want to bring or speak to that point is that we got different parents,
Mm-hmm.
So I realize that now, being 40, that who I was, raising our oldest in my 20s is not who I am raising our younger kids
Oh,
now in my 30s and
definitely.
40s. So unfortunately, like many people, there's always, if you have siblings, there's always the older brother or sister that's just like, you guys have it so much freaking easier, in the sense of maybe it's financial situation. Maybe the parents now are a little more stable, they have jobs and
Mm-hmm.
careers. And when that older child was a kid, they were still struggling, they were grinding, like how we were
Mm-hmm.
in our 20s. Um, so yeah, and that's the thing, like you can realize when, especially when you have a sibling and they're either younger than you or older than you guys may not realize it when you're kids or even teens, but when you become adults and you guys really reflect and maybe communicate about it, you realize like we grew like different people raised us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the parent, like my relationship with mom and dad is not your relationship with mom and dad. So that can also play into obviously maturity level because we obviously, I mean, for the most part, if you're a healthy, emotionally healthy person, you should grow as an adult and grow emotionally. So you can handle things much better. And that also, I mean, definitely plays a part into how you would have raised, your kid at 20 years old to where because you're still figuring things out. I mean,
Right.
shoot, we're still figuring things out, in our
As
40s.
we
So,
evolve as people in general, I think we're going to parent differently.
yeah.
So even our kids, our two younger boys that we had very close in age, we who we were when they were, first born versus who they are now as teenagers, we're completely different people.
Yeah,
And I mean that I think that just is it's gonna happen regardless of, whether your parents, you had them, I don't know, like very close or very far apart. You're going to parent them very
for
differently
sure.
as you grow, as you evolve. And, I think it's safe to say that I think kids will appreciate that, because I mean it would be very scary if we were still parenting our kids, the way that we are parenting them now as teenagers versus toddlers,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So I think it's like our kids are, probably appreciate, the growth and the way that we, approach things. Yes, it's going to happen. However, parenting two different individuals also with two different personalities, two different mindsets, habits, it's a given. It's going to happen. And I do feel that, I mean it's funny because I hear my brother say things sometimes, and he's 10 years younger than me, and I'm like, you have no idea. You have no idea. And I don't say it to like
Try to one up
to
them or something.
right. I'm not trying to one up him or tell him that I had the worst end of it. Like, no. I'm sure there's things that he's experienced that I didn't experience. However, I can say that who my mom was when I was growing up, which she had me very, very young, was completely different what my brother experienced. The security he had, the stability he had. I didn't experience that,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But again, I it's not to downplay anything that he went through. It's not to downplay his own, just emotional, I hate to use the word damage, but maybe trauma that he might have gone through. You don't ever want to downplay someone's experience, but it is very different,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it has a different impact, I believe.
Yeah.
So,
So, yeah, quickly, again, kids that have gone or went through that, it says that they usually feel either unseen, unheard, or invalidated. Again, dealing with parents that maybe are
mm-hmm.
prioritizing their own needs, of course, those three things are just going to happen for the child. And it says like they either become, like we talked about, the caretaker, where they're trying to just run the show, run the household, or they do the other side where they're just like, I'm gonna go invisible. Let me just stay out of their way. Let them do their thing. They don't ask about my stuff, so I'll just kind of raise myself, which that could also lead to a lot of issues down the road. Or you get those that like they need the attention, they want the attention, they're not getting it. So what do? Act out at school, or
Mm-hmm.
they get into fights, or whatever they have to do, positive or negative, they're gonna get attention. And it even said like a lot, sometimes people realize like, it dawns on them as adults like I wasn't even a bad kid. I just wanted someone to notice me.
Mm-hmm.
So I did whatever I needed to do to get noticed. And it's like sad because I mean, how many people we look back, like I had friends that, like in elementary and stuff that were the bad kids that were, had to do the red square during recess. But it's like I wonder back now, or I wonder now, like, damn, what were their homes like? What kind
Mm-hmm.
of parents did they have? I mean, stuff that I wasn't obviously thinking of at 10 and 11 years old. But it's like now I think back, like those kids that I was like, damn, that kid was a badass dude. Like, what were they seeing at home, like, and it sucks, it really is sad to think about it.
Yeah. So I kind of want to speak into that, and I'm going to share my own personal little experience with that. I don't know if it'll apply, but I feel like it kind of does. Um, so when I was growing up in high school, I was pretty good all up until maybe middle school. Was as I started to kind of act out a little bit. Started to kind of experiment with like drugs a little bit. So high school, I was just full blown. I don't care. I'm gonna do it all, and I started. It's funny because I think back on it, and I always remember that every single school year, I promised myself like this year you're gonna do good. This year you're gonna do good, and I admired the kids that were good students. I admired the kids that, got good grades. And it was like this, just something in me, like I wanted to be that. I didn't want to be the bad kid. I didn't want to be the kid that, like, just like, screwed up. And I actually wanted to be known for being smart. I wanted to be known for being, a top student. However, I always struggled with I've never been diagnosed with ADHD. I've never been diagnosed with like a learning disability, but English is my second language. So I have always struggled with, grammar. I've always struggled with like reading. And I felt like I never really had guidance. And when I would go to school, I would like struggle so much. I would have to read, I mean, till this day, I have to read things over and over and over. And I was always embarrassed to tell my mom that I was struggling. So what did I do? I just acted out. Like I just wilded out. Like, well, asking for help is too difficult. And being the good student just doesn't seem like it's in the books for me. So what's my alternative? I am gonna act out. And I noticed my mom was always working, always working. She was a single mom. So I could see the stress in her eyes every single day, every day. I don't think, and I hate to say it, but till this day, I don't think I've not seen the look of stress in my mom's eyes since I was a young girl. And I remember thinking, if I tell her that I'm struggling, I don't know if she's going to be able to handle it. Like, I don't know how
you're adding on to that stress.
I'm adding on to it. And, what was my other option? I mean, and this is an immature, 13, 14, 15-year-old girl that obviously me acting out, me getting suspended, me ditching.
Probably caused her some stress.
Right? But I didn't have that, like, I couldn't, I don't know why. I just thought that was a better option. I think a lot of it was fear. I had a lot of fear of, being challenged with like, one, asking for help. I'm a very prideful person, and I think I always have been. And two, just being vulnerable with my struggles. So I went unfortunately, the unhealthy route of drinking, drugs, ditching, being very defiant. But I think a lot of it was because I didn't see, I never saw vulnerability modeled. I never saw someone in my home admit that they needed help. It was never modeled. That, that healthy vulnerability and just putting yourself out there that you need help or you need assistance, you need guidance, it was never modeled. So
because again, raised by strong, independent women.
Exactly. So what I saw was like, you just shut up, you do what you got to do, and yes, sometimes it's not perfect, but you get it done, right? Yeah. So, and to me, I chose to be defiant and to, do whatever I wanted to do. And I, for some reason, that to me felt like was empowering.
Yeah.
And I look back on it now and I think, I used to really shame myself for that. Like, for not ever admitting that I needed help. But honestly, I was so young. I didn't know how to be vulnerable. I had never seen that in anyone. I mean, anyone. You've met my family. There's, I think we did the best that we could. And I really do. I admire my mom for being the strong woman that she was. And I'm glad that she modeled that. However, I think that ended up somewhat kicking me in the butt,
Mm,
because I, till this day, that's one of my biggest struggles, is being vulnerable.
yeah.
And that is very emotionally immature because it's pride. It's called pride,
Yeah.
so I again, like, I feel that I had a lot of potential, but because I never saw anyone reach out in their own, like, life with their own struggles, it really affected me
Hmm.
on, me, how I dealt with my struggles. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's we both went through that whole seeking out that attention, you doing it in your way.
mm-hmm,
I definitely did it in that way later on down the road. But I think for me, it was different in the beginning in the sense, well, like you said, you did try, you wanted to excel as a student and be recognized for that. And I went that approach too. I went that, okay, and I'm not saying it's hard because it's like I don't want to sit here and blame my parents and say, oh, I felt unheard or I wasn't, validated because I feel like my parents did, like they did, my mom was very loving, very much like, I just, you're the greatest.
mm-hmm.
You're going to do anything. She used to tell people I was going to be president of the United States because I was like into Kennedy and Clinton. And so she was like, he's going to be president of the United States. But I think you and I even talked about that where my switch in my brain is like, okay, so this is how I get my mom and dad's attention and love is by being
Mm-hmm.
good and being the best. So I was just like, I'm gonna, you know, I need to be the best student. If I get a 98% and someone
Mm-hmm.
got a 99, like I didn't do good enough, so I have to study more and do that. So I excelled in elementary all the way up till like high school. Pretty much, I was just like, number one student. And then even in sports, like my
Mm-hmm.
dad taught me baseball and little league. I always wanted to be the best and make all stars and do all that. And that's, you can say, like, on the surface, that's good. Like if that's how you're screaming out for attention, that's a good way to do it. You're going to get attention, and it's not harmful or bad. But what I realized now as an adult, all that really did, and again, I'm not blaming my parents because what they saw was like, hey, we're doing a great job. This kid's smart.
Mm-hmm.
He's good at sports. Like he's good. But what it really does is when you put that on a kid, that is why you are special is because you're smart and you're going to be the president. It's a lot of expectation and it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stress that I didn't realize I was growing up with, or that was being like put into me. But then it turned into then me becoming a teenager, now an adult, to where it's like I need to be the best. And I always just kind
Mm-hmm.
of blamed it on like, oh, I'm just a competitive person. But why are you a competitive person? Why do you feel you have to win at everything? And I think that's so that like desire to be heard and recognized through that really then it impacted me negatively as an adult, which I'm sure it has done for a lot of people. And it didn't, another thing too with that, my parents, one, because again, younger, raising my brother, and then, a little bit more older, late 30s into their 40s, raising me. Um, I think, and then that mixed with the fact that it was, my brother, from what I understand and understood from my parents and seeing, I lived with him for a little bit. By the time I was 8, he had already moved out. But like, he could be difficult. My brother. My parents, they went through some stuff with him and kind of struggled with him, and he was more defiant, definitely, than I was growing up. So I think they went through so much with him, And so then the fact that they were like a little bit older now, because now I'm like I told you, like when I was the age when my dad was when he had me, I'm like, dang, that how my life is, how I feel. And then now like 40, I'm like, okay, when he was this age, I was like 5, 6, blah blah blah. So I'm just like, how would I be raising a kid at that time, you know? And it's like kind of just want to like begin to take it easy. So it's like that again, going back to they did so much for my brother. Now they're older and now they see like, hey, they have a kid who is good. He doesn't talk back as much. He doesn't, cleans his room. He does his homework. You're good.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you got it, right? Go
Right.
out there. So I kind of then took on the, okay, cool, I'll raise myself. I'll do it. Like, I don't really need to. And I was probably pushing down all the things that I wanted to ask about and express and do all this. And again, it's not like I was so messed up, but there was little things happening that I was taking on that I didn't realize were going to be issues
That you
down the
needed
road.
guidance.
Exactly,
You needed
guidance
guidance to
and
navigate through it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that just kind of, escalated into more as I became a teenager, which then, my parents, again, now being even older, were just like, yeah, we really just like, you're good, you're fine. So they didn't see or they just didn't want to see. Like when I began to slip up and began drinking and drugs and going out and doing this and not doing as well in school and not playing sports really. And like, they were just like, well, he's still going to be president. We're good. So again, it's things that how it affects people as kids and what it tends to then who it turns them into as adults,
Mm-hmm.
which I think now one of the big things that when we looked at like kind of like the biggest things that happen to people that come from emotionally immature families is boundary setting, which I think that may have been
Oh God.
how we got onto
Yeah.
this topic because
Yeah.
this has been a hot button for you this last month or so. But it's kind of I mean we've talked about it before. I think we've maybe even talked about it on other episodes. Being like people pleasers, I
Mm-hmm.
think was definitely probably a part of that episode. But yeah, the inability to set boundaries. And that relates back to, kind of a symptom or a consequence of coming from an emotionally immature family because you don't know what is normal or how it should be, like how much is too much, how much is not enough, and
Right.
where you should kind of navigate. So I'll let you really talk on that because I know that's
Well,
something that's
God,
again
I mean,
been
you said
important
so
to you.
many things that I really want to touch on because I feel I don't want to miss this opportunity. And then I'll come back to what you were talking about right now. But
Mm,
a couple of things that you said in regards to how you felt about, when I guess the word would be becoming like an overachiever, right?
mm-hmm.
Like you just depending on what you did is how you felt you got praise
It was my
and
worth,
it
like
was your
yeah.
worth. And I think so many people that are intellectual people, which I think you're a very smart person and you're someone that if you're given a challenge, you're going to figure out a way to do it. And I think
Unless it's common sense stuff like putting something together or weighing out our food.
you're book smart. You're
Yeah,
book smart, and I love that I have someone that can, if I write something, you fix it for me.
just don't have me.
Yeah, I love that you're someone that can go off of bullet points, and I can
Yeah.
just bounce off of you because I just have a very hard time with that. But anyways, I think that a lot of people that are very intellectual and very, self driven tend to fall under that trap
Mm,
of, you know, feeling that your worth isn't where, just who you are, it's what you do.
yeah.
And I think a lot of it comes from being raised by emotionally immature people, because they don't I mean, I don't know. The thing is, it's like, I know, and I know your parents, and I feel like they've always spoken very highly of you. And
Mm,
I think
yeah.
they did their best. And I do believe I mean, your mom still does, anytime she comes over, she reminds you like just how great you are, how smart you are. However, I think that for kids, it can carry a different kind of weight. Those words can carry, and I think that's what might have happened, where they carried a weight. They weren't like like it wasn't so much a boost of like, let me boost your confidence. It becomes a weight. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of that happens when we don't educate our kids to like, hey, no matter what you do, like you're going to be amazing. You're going to be great. And, and I think that as parents, we need to do better
Yeah.
with that, because sometimes we bombard them with like, oh, you're going to be this and you're going to be that. And then what happens when the children can't perform or can't come through? Like, which is like, it's ridiculous to even say that. But what happens with
Yeah.
the child,
We said that, we talked about that too, where I was like, that goes to show you how difficult parenting can be,
Oh,
because it's like we're literally saying, if you're a parent who every day you just tell your child you are so special, you're so smart, and you're going to do great things in your life, that's actually can be negative. And it's like, what?
yes.
Like, what are you talking
And
about? Because
it sounds so crazy, right? But
yeah,
I think to prepare your children, you know, to set them up in a way where, hey, you're going to be the greatest. What if they make a mistake?
yeah, like how do you teach them that,
How do
you
you
know?
teach them that? How do you bring them back from that?
Yeah.
And I think again, it's because I think now, us millennials, I feel like been we've been privileged in a sense where we have a lot of information. We were like the pioneers of like technology, and we, the internet and all this. So we have a lot of information at our fingertips, and I think because of that we have that awareness, right? Like our
Yeah.
parents didn't. Our parents thought by love bombing us and telling us all
Yeah.
these things that was going to be, because maybe they didn't experience
Yeah,
that. they
they're
they experienced more harsh words, more like, hey, this is real life. Like,
yeah, they
you
were
better work, and you
exactly.
better like, no, nothing's given to you. And it's in a way, like, I feel like we're kind of bringing it back to that now, right? Like, we're kind of being a little bit more real.
Yeah.
And it's causing our kids to be a little bit, I hope a little more thicker skinned, because the truth is that life is not easy. And things, all these great things that we want to set our kids to think, it's it's not always going to be like
Yeah.
that, right? So anyways, I feel that, I think a lot of our value was based on what we did, how we performed, versus on who we are. And it's very, very, very dangerous, to live in that kind of that mindset,
Yeah.
because
It
we'll always be performing. We will perform, and that goes back to the people pleasing.
yeah.
Who we are, what we do for people, it's so dangerous,
And like I said, goes back to the difficulty of parenting, because it's like, okay, you tell them they're great and you're going to do great things, but then, and that can be negative. However, okay, well then you just tell them you're great, who you are, no matter what you do or don't do in life. So then what if that kid then is like, well, F it, dude. My mom said I could
Mm-hmm.
just not do anything and I'm going to be great. And then they have this kind of like expect things in life,
Where
like,
they have like a god complex, right?
exactly. So it's just like, oh my gosh. And it's, again, it's an understatement, obviously. Like, parenting's hard. Like, yeah, no shit. Like, that's why,
Yeah,
again, maybe you
it's
should
a
really
big
think about before you become a parent,
it's a big trial and error, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And
It's
and I
that's why I
want
think
to
you should just have a lot of kids, because it's like, percentages, like I'm gonna get like 7 out of the 10 good. We'll just forget about those other three.
yeah, one of those is going to be good.
Yeah, one of them at least.
And really quick, one last thing I wanted to touch on with, you were talking about your brother. That goes back to what we were saying, like having two completely set of parents,
Yeah,
right?
the
I mean,
parents he
for
knew
all we
wasn't
knew,
who I
I
knew.
mean, obviously, I wasn't there for sure the first 10 years of his life, neither were you,
Yeah,
right? So who knows? What if he did get the tough love kind of parent? And your parents saw, hey, that didn't work. So
yeah.
let's bombard our next child with, with love bombs, and then
Let's
what
see if that
happens now?
works.
Let's see if that works.
Yeah,
So again, like, and not to justify bad behavior, but I'm saying like we just never know, and as parents we're just constantly trying the next thing, trying the next thing. And I think if we come from a place, from a more emotionally mature place, we'll be able to discern is what is the correct thing. And I one thing I want to say, because I know we keep saying normal, there's normal and then there's healthy, right? Because
Go explain
normal,
more. What do you mean?
because when you say, to me, the way that I was raised was normal.
Well, it's your normal.
That was my
Yeah,
norm,
right.
right? Like the way you were raised, that's normal. Like, doesn't everybody do this? Doesn't
Yeah.
everybody that?
You run into people that think it's normal to use Miracle Whip instead of regular mayonnaise, and they think that's
Oh,
normal.
that's just straight. No,
That's chaos.
No, that's no.
That's just chaos.
But I'm saying there's normal and then there's healthy, and I think
Yeah.
that we bring our norm, into our way of parenting, and until you figure out the healthy way,
yeah,
of doing it, you're gonna continue redoing what you think, is normal and what you think has always been done.
Yeah.
However, has not worked. Right? And
because normal can be subjective to the person.
Exactly.
Healthy is
it's
healthy.
subjective.
This is the way that you should do it.
Right.
How you go about doing it, like it's healthy to communicate. How you communicate, some people, it's like, okay, you can just sit down and have conversations. Other people are like, well, me and my mom and dad, we weren't really good at talking, but I would write them a letter and then they would write it back and just hand it to me, but we would get our points across. Like, it's kind of weird, but I guess you're communicating.
Yeah.
I don't know. As long as you're communicating your needs and feelings.
Some people communicate a lot better through writing or
Yeah.
texting. Some people communicate better by talking. And, and who are we to say that that's not the right way?
Right.
As long as there's communication, I think that's healthy.
Yeah. If you guys have to have like a weekly poetry slam and just get it out that way, I don't know. Whatever you got to do.
Like Derick and I, we have every Friday, we just scream at each other.
Yeah, right.
And, anything goes. Like, it's fine.
Sometimes I mime. I mime my emotions because that's how I feel. I can't speak.
He's not allowed to talk, guys. But anyhow, I do feel that, a lot of the reasons why we have so many, I'm going to bring it back to what you said, the last thing that you said about boundaries. We struggle with boundaries like so much because we were trained to make people feel.
Sorry. If you heard that, that's our dog. Got to get it out.
We were taught, we were conditioned to, and I like to say trained, but we were conditioned to make people feel better, to keep the peace.
Keep the peace, yeah.
Don't start any waves. And unfortunately, that led to many, many years of people pleasing, of not understanding how important boundaries are. And, we ended up in relationships, friendships, workplace, in so many different situations that I think really caused us to put ourselves aside for, for however long. And it wasn't until we stopped drinking, which I think that drinking is one of the things that...
It's another consequence or coping mechanism for this.
It's such a coping mechanism.
But it's a coping mechanism for almost every trauma.
Because it really numbs
that's all
how you
doing.
really feel.
Yeah.
And it makes people pleasing so much easier. It just makes it tolerable. And I think it wasn't until we stopped that all these things came to light, and we realized, that a lot of what we were doing was, it was survival. And I think a lot of it was just us still coping with the fact that we didn't feel like we were parented. And this isn't to speak, as if we were victims. No, it was just our experience. It's what we went through. It's what many, many people go through. But the beauty of life and growing up and healing and maturing is that you realize you don't have to continue this.
Yeah.
You have the power to actually break this. You have the power to create something better, something healthier. I really quick, I just want to say that, I think I'd sent you this podcast the other day where like they were talking about the whole like self-help thing, how it's becoming like an issue or like a
Oh yeah. Well,
almost,
that's another episode.
yeah,
We are doing that
because
episode.
we're not, the thing is, and I'm pro therapy. I am someone that believes in the power of like talk therapy. However, if you are in your 10th year of therapy
Yeah.
and you're talking about the same shit,
Yeah.
get
I was gonna say it's.
the freak on.
I'm
Come
pro talk
on.
therapy as well, as long as it is used for its intentions and correctly,
Then
and
you're just
you grow
venting.
from it.
Because then
Yeah.
you're just venting, and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
There's no progress.
If you're with the same therapist for 10 years and you're still talking about the same stuff, that therapist is taking your money. You're getting robbed because
Exactly. Then your therapist is like, I'm sorry to say, like they're not helping. They're not, I mean, my therapist, I think I was with her for about a little over a year, and I mean she would call me out, and I
Yeah.
appreciated that. And she didn't want me to stop seeing her, but I felt like I needed to have an integration period where
Yeah.
like, okay, now it's everything I've learned, I need to start applying it. Like what am I going to do? And and there's moments where you feel like, yeah, I might need to go back, and that's okay. Like there's no shame in that.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you're like broken again. It means that you're like,
Or if
we need guidance. We
Yeah.
need an outside perspective. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Or if you feel you've gotten over something, but then a little bit down the road it comes up again, that's
Mm-hmm.
also normal. It's you when you deal with something for decades of your life and you go to therapy for 6 months and feel like you got over it, like weigh it out. Like, do you think that you
Mm-hmm.
really did? I mean, I'm not saying it can't happen. Maybe you really can get over that trauma or whatever that quickly, but usually it's stuff that you kind of have to work on gradually over a long span of time, little by
Yeah.
little, let it go.
Well,
And
even if, like something new in your life happens, like us, we stopped drinking and things that we thought we had dealt with
Mhm.
started coming up. Because now
Yeah,
you see them under a new light, right? A new lens.
exactly. I mean, and that's again to not make it a sobriety episode, but that is definitely, I feel, one thing that really, scares people to try and stop or to try and cut back because they know that exactly. They know that if
Mm-hmm.
without my escape, without my, couple of drinks here or being able to kind of let loose on the weekend, all that shit and trauma that I know I have is going to eventually begin to trickle out and I'm going to have to deal with it. And I
Mm-hmm.
just don't want to. And unfortunately, that's what kind of keeps people prisoner to that. Well, I just drink a little bit. I don't really have a problem, but, but
And I want to say really quick because we watched this episode the other day on I think the podcast it's called Blocks or something like that. But
oh, and Neil
and
Brenneman.
yeah, and Johnny Knoxville was on there,
Oh, that
and he
was
was talking about how he was raised in an emotionally immature household because he was raised by an alcoholic, right? And I think a lot of the people that were raised in an emotional immature home, most of the time, it's because some kind of substance abuse was
Yeah.
involved. And even if, and I'll say this, I wouldn't ever say that you and I were alcoholics. However, anytime we had an issue, how did we deal with it?
Yeah.
We drank. And what does that do? That doesn't help the cause. That just puts you into a darker state of mind and in denial. And it just helps you avoid what you need to face.
Yeah.
And that is called immaturity. I mean, that right there is emotional immaturity. And what we have stepped into, I mean, we're still learning to step into that, is emotional sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
And that has a lot to do with it. And I think a lot of people, and again, this wasn't part of our bullet points, but I wanted to bring this up because I feel like a lot of people that grew up in homes that had some form of substance abuse or alcohol faced a lot of emotional immature parents because they didn't. Why did they lean towards a substance? because they didn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to cope. They didn't know how to face it. And we do that. We do that every time we reach for alcohol when we're too stressed, when we're upset, when we're happy, when we want to celebrate. We think that's how you do it.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's really it's such a big lie.
It again, to not make it a sobriety
I
pod,
think we just did.
but I also want to say to not make it a sobriety and then conspiracy theorist pod. But because you said it like that, it kind of made me think too. It's just like, well, we always say like, how is it that alcohol is so like widely accepted and pushed and just the normal that like, I mean, we don't even like blink anymore to
Right.
just like, you know, alcohol ads or alcohol in movies or alcohol in songs or just alcohol. Because, but if you really think about it, like we said, alcohol is a way to not have to deal with those things. So why would they want to push that on society? Because, you know, the whoever that's running things, it's because they know everything's kind of shit. You know, the government's kind of this, the economy's this, the pollution in the world, we're all kind of just killing ourselves on earth. So let's push alcohol so people don't have to think about it. Let's just live for the weekend. Let's keep pushing it during sports. You know, let's keep pushing it for movies and stuff. And it's just like, because it's a way to cope with like, well, everything's kind of crap. And that's on like the big stage, but then it goes down to like your personal smaller stage of like dealing with like stuff that you went through growing up, stuff with your parents and siblings, friendships, relationships. Let me just numb it with the alcohol. And again, we have had sobriety episodes and we'll continue to have them, and that's for a later discussion. But you know, bringing it back to this episode, yeah, like that Johnny Knoxville episode, that was another aha moment because he begins to discuss how he grew up in that emotionally immature family due to having an alcoholic parent, which then had an effect on him as an adult in his personal relationships. To where, if I really wish if you haven't heard or have never heard that, go in it again. It's Neil Brenneman Blocks when he interviews Johnny Knoxville. If you want to know who I am and in my relationships, go listen to Johnny Knoxville, because I remember telling Jess, she sent it to me, and she sent it to me. I don't even
like,
think
this is you.
Yeah, it was really, really strange because I was at work. Yes, at work listening to podcasts, but I was listening to it and I'm like, oh my God, I've never heard someone explain exactly how I feel in my relationships like Johnny Knoxville. So I am spiritually and emotionally connected to Johnny Knoxville.
You guys might have been the same person.
Seriously,
at some point.
like he just, you know, to kind of sum it up, he really just talks about how he doesn't know how to, like, you know, in a healthy way express his needs, his emotions to his partner. And kind of always felt like he tiptoed around things and just wanted to keep the peace. I don't like conflict. If she's doing something that I didn't like, I don't want to bring it up. It's fine. And it just, you know, it again, it snowballs and it gets bigger and bigger. And like Jess said before, me being that kind of person, I would let it snowball and build and build and build. And then let's go to the bar and get drunk. And then I'm just going to fucking throw up all over you. Try to get out everything I'm feeling while being drunk, and then expect you to take it in a healthy, you know, supportive way. And this is how I think in my head, we're going to get over our problems, or I'm going to get over this issue by trying to explain it while being drunk, you know?
Really quick, you know, because I remember Johnny Knoxville mentioning this about how he had a hard time expressing himself because for some reason he didn't feel safe or didn't feel like he could trust, you know, either his wife or, and I'm sure it started when he was really young, right? Like he didn't feel safe expressing himself, saying how he really felt. And you know, a lot of the times that we as kids, and I take it back to what I said with how I felt like when I was struggling with school, I didn't feel safe to express my needs or my struggles because I thought, oh, my mom's already stressed enough and she's already going through so much, so it's just like it's not safe for me to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, you know, you in a way felt also that, right? So what happens when we don't feel that safety and security as children to express ourselves, to express our needs, express our challenges, our struggles? Now we bring that into our relationship. And
Yeah.
now, because again, we've never been taught to, emotionally, not even just like emotionally express ourselves, but even to identify exactly what we're feeling.
Yeah.
Right? Like we don't even have the maturity, even as adults, to truly like identify or narrow down like, what am I feeling right now?
Yeah.
Like what is this, right? And then to throw in the alcohol, like, which, and it's funny because every time that we would fight, or all of a sudden stuff will come up, and we both did it, it was when we were drunk, right? Because what alcohol gives you courage. Now all of a
Yeah.
sudden, I got the courage to tell you what the fuck I really think, and it just comes out. And again, because alcohol, it's obviously really just puts you in a completely different state of mind, but it comes out messy, and even that is just it's a bunch of nonsense, and it doesn't make any sense. And we think we've like all of a sudden relieved ourselves, or we've expressed ourselves, but it's even worse now,
Yeah. Now you
right?
just made it more
Now it's just even more
confusing and yeah.
confusing. So I think a lot of it is, again, I take it to emotional sobriety, is that when you start to truly understand and truly, look into yourself and begin to listen to yourself, identify these feelings and emotions, then we can begin to express them, to tackle them, and also to remind ourselves like, just because you didn't feel safe as a child doesn't mean that you can't feel safe as an adult with your partner, with your spouse. Like, there's a reason why you chose them. And I just want to say this, that if you are in a relationship where you don't feel safe, then maybe
Yeah.
therapy is needed.
Well,
maybe you need a middle person to help
yeah.
you navigate through that. And there's no shame in that. There was a lot of things that when you and I went to, marriage counseling, like we kind of had a middle person to like, soften that buffer to for us to begin to express ourselves. And I don't think it's so much that we didn't feel safe with each other. I don't think it's so much that we didn't feel safe with each other. I think it was just that we never knew, like, we had never truly experienced that type of vulnerability with one another.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I was gonna say it, like you said, you will find someone. Well, because one of the things it said, like people as adults will then have issues with boundaries, but then one of the other things is that they will seek out other emotionally immature people, because it'd be great if everyone that comes from like this kind of an upbringing found someone that came from a very healthy
cool,
family.
You avoid your shit too?
Yeah.
Nice. Let's avoid it together.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If everyone could find someone that came from like a healthy growing upbringing and like, okay, I can guide you and help you in how to be, but no, we find someone like you said, like, wait a minute, why do I like this person so much? Like, they get me. It's like, no, it's because you guys both came from some fucked up shit. Like, so you guys are kind of like guiding each other, but no one really knows what to do. And that's the whole thing of, identifying these things of like, hey, I did grow up in that kind of a household, right? That's kind of how my parents were. Is that why I am the way I am?
Mm-hmm.
Asking those questions. But again, if you never are prompted to or never have the clarity to think about those kinds of things, why would you ever try to change it? So again, it's important to, right now, like ask yourself, hey, in my marriage or in my relationship, do we kind of tend to feel this way? And if you do, like you said, seek out therapy or talk to your spouse, talk to your partner about this. Look up these things about emotionally immature upbringings and families, and see what you relate to and what you can do about it. Because and that's the whole thing. What makes it hard is the other thing it says is that people, a consequence from this kind of upbringing for adults, is that people begin to they don't seek out like self-care. Right. They don't prioritize self-care. They almost feel guilty that they're doing it because it's just like, oh, I'm being a baby. Like there was much worse. People were,
Mm-hmm.
people were beaten and molested, and yes, those are horrible, horrible situations that people went through. But again, like you said, you never knock anyone for whatever their trauma was,
Right.
because if maybe they weren't in that kind of a situation, but they grew up with parents that you know didn't prioritize them, didn't communicate with them, and that
Self care wasn't modeled,
exactly. Those
right?
have lasting effects,
Yeah.
and that is a traumatic thing in their life.
Kids learn by what
Um,
they see, right?
exactly. So it again, like little things that we can recognize as adults, that we, either how we act, how we respond to things, and kind of ask like, well, why do I
Mm-hmm.
respond like that?
And we need to. I really want to emphasize the importance of self care. When we deny ourselves that, we're one, not only hurting ourselves, but the whole reason why you deny yourself self-care is because you feel like, well, everybody else has to come first. Guess what? You're going to end up resentful towards those people.
Yeah.
You are going to end up looking at those people like it's their fault why you didn't take care of yourself. And to tell you the truth, that is no one's fault. That is 100% your fault.
Yeah.
It is your responsibility to take care of yourself. It is your responsibility to meet your own needs. It's nobody else's responsibility.
Yeah.
So this is why I really do think that we do need to prioritize self-care. Even as a parent, yes, there is things that we need to prioritize our children with, of course. There's things that, again, that you as a parent are responsible for. You as a parent are responsible for, but however, there's things that you can also prioritize yourself for. So
Yeah, for whatever the reason, or whoever was to blame, I guess, for why you are the way you are, that doesn't take away the responsibility of now, like, okay, you've acknowledged it or you have realized it. Now it's up to you to fix it. No
right.
one else is going to fix
It
it
is
for
your
you.
responsibility to
Yeah.
heal. It is your responsibility to make a
Because
change.
people get caught up in that. They get caught up again in the victim mentality of like, I am the way I am because of my parent or because of my brother or my sister or whatever, my upbringing, the things that were available to me or weren't available to me. These are the reasons why I am in the situation I am.
Right.
And then they just stop there. And I'm just gonna like use that now for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
It's because my parents got a divorce or it's because I this. And then they don't want to do the work to like better themselves besides just complain about it.
I think that's an easy way to identify a narcissist.
Yeah.
People that want to always find an excuse and not a solution.
Yeah.
People that always have a reason
Problem
for being
based
an
rather
asshole.
than solution based. Yeah.
And just say, well, or people that are just like, well, this is how I am, like. And just one other thing, because I know that you mentioned something about, asking ourselves a question if, whether you're in a relationship, to ask yourself or your spouse a question. I think even if you're not in a marriage, you can identify if you're in an emotionally immature relationship, even in your friendships.
Yeah.
Because
it says
within your friendships.
Exactly. It says finding emotionally immature partners or like either relationships or friendships.
Right.
Because you can find that in your friends too.
Because I think that's something also that, through sobriety, we were able to recognize, some things in friendships, some dynamics in friendships that were built that were unhealthy,
Yeah.
And again, I take it back to alcohol, because alcohol numbs you so much that you are willing to overlook a lot of red flags, overlook a lot of things that, can, like, things that make you feel not so good, or situations that you maybe boundaries were crossed, and you just kind of like, just dismissed it because that's what we're used to doing.
Yeah.
Because as children, we learn to, when we don't feel good, we just kind of like, well, I don't know, like maybe this is normal. Maybe this is how I'm supposed to feel. So I'll just deal with it. And we take that on into our adult relationships or friendships, and then before you know it, it's just been years and years of tolerating unhealthy situations, and all because we don't know how to express ourselves. We don't know how to speak up. We don't know how to advocate for ourselves. So even if you're not in a relationship, you know, you can even in a workplace, you know, there's things that because we're not emotionally mature or aware of unhealthy, you know, just behaviors or you know how people cross boundaries, we can easily fall into a very toxic situation very quickly.
Yeah.
So,
And I think, you know, it says, like, of course, some of the things to kind of help, you know, if you realize and identify some of these things of that you see in yourself, of course, the fundamental basics of seeking out therapy, journaling, you know, self care, shadow work, all of these things. But one of the big things is, like you said, maybe to help like the important things of like your marriage or a relationship is start small. Like you said, even if you identify it in some friendships, starting those boundaries in friendships or just like little things, you know, like I don't know, like, hey, I really I can't be available during the week. I really want to focus
right.
in on my spouse or focus in on my kids. So I'm really only gonna like do things and hang out on weekends, or just whatever that may look like. But just kind of practicing small boundaries. If you're someone who really has an issue with like setting personal boundaries in space, doing the smallest of small things will kind of help to allow you to grow into that, and then to build like relationships. Like we said, we usually tend to seek out people who are very similar to us and maybe us in our shortcomings and stuff too, but like to find, you know, find friends or find friendships or other partners, or I'm sorry, other relationships that maybe, hey, they look like they know what they're doing, and not be scared to ask, like, hey, have you guys ever gone through these things? What did you do? You know, to kind of like meet or make those new friendships. And like you said, that was kind of something, again, realizing once we, you know, kind of eliminated drinking, to like, hey, maybe we should try and seek out a different kind of people or persons that we are not used to hanging out with, and maybe look at that
Yeah.
relationship looks a little bit different.
You can
know?
tell people that are emotionally mature because they have a lot of like security within themselves.
Yeah, more confident.
They're
Yeah.
very confident. They don't have a problem saying no.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah,
and you know, I've always kind of envied that because I you know, just I always felt like just like this weight of like if I committed to something, I have to stick to it. Like, yeah, but what if something happened? Like, what if, you know, like things happen and we have to cancel plans? Like, I always just felt this guilt. And, you know, when people would cancel on me or you know, not even give me an excuse, just like simply, sorry, I can't make it. I almost kind of envied that because I'm like, dang, how did you do that?
Like, wait a minute, you said no?
Like, you
Like,
didn't even explain. You didn't say sorry. Or yeah, like, you know, either you said sorry or there's people that are just like, can't make it tonight, but have fun. Like,
yeah. I saw a video where a guy was saying that, like, about being more assertive with your nose and not being like a people pleaser, where he was like really like consciously practice that. Don't start with I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Or don't start with that sounds like so much fun, but it's just like immediately when someone says something that you don't want to do or you know you can't do, be like, yeah, I'm just not available. That sounds fun, but I'm not available.
Well, we were just talking about this yesterday, right? About like your couple of friends had asked you. I mean, we haven't seen these friends in forever.
Oh,
but
yeah.
they wanted to go to some kind of theme park, and you felt bad about it. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, I was like, why
You
do I
know?
feel guilty? And I was just like, and you were like, because it'll be very difficult for you to
It's
do that.
inconvenient.
Yeah, and it's like hard, and you don't
Yeah.
have the time, or you just can't. You can't make it. So why not just be honest? And then like once I said like, you know, because I even joked, I'm just like, I'm just not gonna respond to anything. You're like, yeah, don't do that. Just say you can't.
Right.
And then I did, and it was just like they, you know, agreed. Like, yeah, that actually would be a lot for you. Well, anyways.
Yeah, like it's really far, and you know, and again, like we're always so scared of what the other person's how they're gonna respond or how they're gonna react, but
Yeah.
that's not our problem, right?
Exactly.
Like it's not our problem. We
Again,
make
it goes
it
back.
our problem.
It goes back to us being the caretaker and worried about how everyone's gonna. Let's just keep the
Exactly.
peace. Let's just keep it
Right.
going, and yeah.
And
so
that's just too heavy of a burden for us to carry.
Yeah.
But again, that's something that we just learned as children, and you know, we have the power to change that.
Yeah.
And we have the power to make changes and to make a difference in not just our life, but also our children's lives,
Yeah.
where they can see empowerment. They can see, self respect and boundaries, and we don't have to teach our kids to be assholes, but we can teach them to be honest.
Yeah.
And again, it starts with us. It really does start with us. And I just want to say, for anyone that might be feeling some kind of resentment towards their parents, maybe this might spark a little bit of like, anger or resentment, and it's understandable. However, I think what we can do, the best thing that we can do for ourselves, is just reparent ourselves.
Yeah.
And start to heal and start to let go of maybe the expectations that we had for our parents, the expectations that we set on them. We feel like maybe they set expectations on us. Well, we also set expectations on them. And yes, there is some things that are given where parents are responsible for us, to an extent, and also to a certain age, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a 40-year-old still expecting your parents to take care of you, let's come on,
Yeah.
So again, I really do feel that the best thing that we can do is reparent ourselves, have grace for ourselves and for our parents. They did the best that they could. This isn't to bash them or even bash us as parents.
Don't self-blame either,
Because that's just falling into a victim mentality. And if you haven't listened to that episode, you should go and listen to it. But I think at the end of the day, we're just humans going through a human experience, and we're learning.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for, and that's all we can do.
Good. Yeah, I mean, it always just comes to recognizing, and then what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing. But I hope you guys did get some useful and helpful information from this. I hope you didn't identify with too much. Hopefully you're just like a healthy individual, and you're just like, yeah, none of this relates to me. I talk to my parents just fine. They talk to me, and I'm great. And then, hey, you're good. On to the next episode. But
yeah, we have our 2 emotionally immature pup kids here now
acting
up. So
exactly.
That's our cue.
We have to go parent them right now. So thank you guys. We're going to end it here. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Don't forget we're on YouTube, so if you guys want to see us.
Oh, that's right. We didn't really comment on our new studio situation we have here. So for those of you that are on YouTube, you're checking it out as we speak. And for those of you still listening just to the pod on Apple or something, go check out YouTube so you can see it. Yes. But we will be back soon with another episode, and we'll see you guys then.
All right. Bye. Why do you act up?